The boot slammed down on his burger, ground it into the concrete. A 16-year-old deaf black boy dropped to his knees, hands shaking, signing desperately. "Please, please stop." 4 teenagers circled him, laughing, phones recording. "Can't even scream for help," Derek Sullivan sneered, zooming in on the tears streaming down Jamal Carter's face. They posted it with a crying, laughing emoji. 200,000 views by sunrise. But 300 miles away, a man watched that video, and his coffee mug shattered on the floor. He recognized those eyes. He'd made a promise to a dying soldier 7 years ago, a promise he'd broken. Now 40 Hell's Angels were mounting their bikes, and those bullies had no idea what was coming. Subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the end. Comment your city below. Let us see how far this story travels. The burger hit the ground first. Then the boot came down on it. Slow, deliberate, grinding the meat and bread into the concrete like it was nothing. Like it meant nothing. Jamal Carter watched it happen. His dinner. The only thing he'd eaten all day. Gone. His hands moved before he could stop them, signing desperately, "Please, please give it back." Derek Sullivan tilted his head, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "What's that? I can't hear you." His friends erupted in laughter. 4 of them, all wearing Letterman jackets, all circling Jamal like wolves who'd found wounded prey. "Yo, Derek, do the thing again," one of them said. "Do what he's doing." Derek's hands flailed wildly, mocking the signs, his fingers twisted into ugly shapes that meant nothing. The others howled louder. Jamal's chest tightened. He couldn't hear their laughter, but he could see it, feel it vibrating through the air, see their mouths wide open, their bodies shaking with amusement at his expense. "Stop," he signed. "Please stop." "What's wrong?" Derek stepped closer, his phone still recording. "Cat got your tongue? Oh wait, you don't got one that works, do you?" Another boy shoved Jamal from behind. He stumbled forward, nearly falling. "Can't even scream for help," Derek said, zooming the camera in on Jamal's face. "How pathetic is that?" Jamal's skateboard, the one his father had given him before deploying to Afghanistan, before everything changed, went flying. One of the boys kicked it into the street, where a passing car ran over it with a sickening crack. That's when the tears came. Jamal tried to hold them back. He bit his lip until he tasted copper. He dug his fingernails into his palms until they left crescent moons in his skin. But watching his father's last gift splinter into pieces on the asphalt, something inside him broke too. The tears fell, and Derek Sullivan captured every single one. "Oh man, he's actually crying," Derek said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "This is gold. This is absolute gold." He stepped back, getting a wider shot, making sure his friend's laughter was audible in the background. "Silent loser can't even scream," Derek narrated for his future audience. "Probably can't hear how stupid he looks either." They walked away laughing, leaving Jamal on his knees in the parking lot of Rosie's Diner, surrounded by the remains of his dinner and his dignity. 20 minutes later, the video was online. Caption: "Silent loser can't even scream." By morning, it had 200,000 views. 300 miles away in Pittsburgh, Marcus "Tank" Reeves was on his 3rd cup of coffee when his phone buzzed. He almost ignored it. It was 6:30 in the morning, and he'd barely slept. The nightmares had come again last night, the same ones that had haunted him for 7 years. Sand, blood, the deafening whistle of incoming mortars, and always, always, the face of the man who'd saved his life. But something made him look at his phone. A message in the Hells Angels group chat. Diesel had posted a video with 3 words. "This is wrong." Tank's thumb hovered over the play button. He'd seen enough cruelty in his 47 years. 2 tours in Afghanistan, 3 marriages that fell apart because he couldn't stop seeing ghosts. A drinking problem he'd only recently gotten under control. He didn't need to see more pain. But something made him press play. The video started with laughter. Teenage boys, their faces blurred by movement, circling someone on the ground. Tank's jaw tightened. He'd seen this kind of thing before. Pack mentality, the strong preying on the weak. Then the camera focused on the victim's face. Tank's coffee mug slipped from his fingers. It shattered on the kitchen floor, brown liquid spreading across the tiles. But Tank didn't move, didn't breathe, couldn't breathe. Those eyes, that jaw, the way the boy held himself, even while crying, shoulders squared, chin up, refusing to completely break even as tears streamed down his face. Tank knew that face. He'd watched it take its last breath 7 years ago, in a field hospital in Kandahar. "No," Tank whispered. "No, no, no." He grabbed his phone with shaking hands, rewinding the video, pausing on the boy's face. The resemblance was undeniable. The same high cheekbones, the same determined set to the mouth, the same eyes that seemed to carry weight far beyond their years. Sergeant Marcus Carter's eyes. The man who'd thrown himself over Tank when the mortars came. The man who'd taken shrapnel to the spine that should have killed him instantly. The man who'd grabbed Tank's collar with bloody hands as the medics rushed toward them. Tank could still feel those hands, still see the light fading from Marcus's eyes, still hear the words that had been seared into his memory like a brand. "My boy, Jamal. He's only 9. If I don't make it, promise me, Tank. Promise you'll look out for him." Tank had promised. He'd held Marcus's hand as the life drained out of him, and he'd sworn on everything holy that he would protect that boy. Then Marcus Carter died, and Tank had failed. The funeral had been 3 weeks later. Tank remembered standing in the rain at Arlington National Cemetery, watching the flag being folded with precise, practiced movements. He remembered the crack of the rifle salute, each shot making him flinch, dragging him back to the battlefield. He remembered Denise Carter, Marcus's widow, standing rigid and unmoving as they handed her the folded flag. Her face was a mask of grief, but she didn't cry, not once, not in front of all these people. And beside her, holding her hand, was a 9-year-old boy who couldn't hear the prayers being spoken over his father's grave. Jamal. Tank had approached them after the service, his dress uniform soaked through, rain mixing with the tears he couldn't stop. "Mrs. Carter," he'd said, his voice breaking. "I'm Marcus Reeves. I served with your husband." Denise had looked at him with hollow eyes. "He mentioned you in his letters. Said you were like a brother to him." "He saved my life." Tank's voice cracked. "He threw himself over me when the mortars hit. Took the shrapnel that should have killed me. I should be the one in that grave, ma'am. Not him." Denise had reached out and touched his arm. "He made his choice. That's who he was." Tank had knelt down then, bringing himself eye level with Jamal. The boy watched him with wary eyes, not understanding the words being spoken, but reading something in Tank's face. "I made a promise to your daddy," Tank said slowly, hoping the boy could read his lips. "I'm going to keep it. I'm going to look out for you. Both of you. Whatever you need, I'll be there." Jamal had stared at him for a long moment. Then his small hands had moved, forming signs that Tank didn't understand. "He says thank you Denise translated, her voice finally breaking. "He says his daddy told him about you. Said you were the bravest man he knew." Tank had broken down then, sobbing in the rain, in front of God and everyone, because he knew the truth. He wasn't brave. Marcus Carter had been brave. Marcus Carter had died for him. And Tank was just a broken man who should be in that grave instead. But promises, Tank learned, are easy to make and hard to keep. A year after the funeral, he moved to Pittsburgh, told himself it was for work, but really he was running. Running from the memories. Running from the guilt. Running from the face of a 9-year-old boy who looked too much like the man who died for him. He sent cards at Christmas, called Denise a few times, awkward conversations filled with long silences and things neither of them knew how to say. Then the calls went unanswered. Then the cards came back, returned a cinder, address unknown. Tank told himself the family had moved on, found peace somewhere new. Didn't need a reminder of the worst day of their lives showing up on their doorstep. He told himself a lot of things in those years. He told himself he was honoring Marcus's memory by living his life, by running his motorcycle repair shop, by riding with the Hells Angels, a group of veterans who understood what it meant to carry invisible wounds. He told himself the nightmares would stop eventually. He told himself the guilt would fade. He told himself he hadn't broken the most important promise he'd ever made. But standing in his kitchen, coffee dripping from the counter, watching Marcus Carter's son cry on a phone screen while teenagers laughed, Tank couldn't lie to himself anymore. He'd failed. And now, 7 years too late, he was going to make it right. Tank's hands were shaking as he opened his laptop. Millbrook, Ohio, he typed into the search bar. The results came up instantly. Small town, population 8,000, 2 hours south of Cleveland. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where secrets didn't stay secret for long, where strangers were noticed and remembered. Tank pulled up the white pages, searching for Carter. Denise Carter. 1847 Oak Street, Millbrook, Ohio. She was still there. All this time, just 2 states away, and Tank had never known, never looked, never tried hard enough to find them. His finger hovered over his phone. He could call her, explain everything, apologize for disappearing. But words weren't enough anymore. Words had never been enough. Tank opened the Hells Angels group chat. 43 members, veterans from across 3 states, men and women who'd served their country and found family on the open road. People who understood that some battles don't end when you come home. He started typing. Brothers and sisters, I need your help. 7 years ago, I made a promise to a dying man. I said I'd protect his son. I failed. But today, I saw that boy crying on a video while teenagers laughed at him, mocked him, humiliated him, because he's deaf, because he's different. I'm done failing. I'm riding to Millbrook, Ohio, and I'm asking you to ride with me. It's time to show that boy and that whole damn town that he's not alone. He attached the video. His thumb hesitated over the send button. Once he did this, there was no going back. No more hiding, no more running. He would have to face Denise Carter and explain why he'd abandoned them. He would have to look Jamal in the eye and see Marcus staring back at him. He would have to keep a promise that was 7 years overdue. Tank pressed send. Within 30 seconds, the replies started pouring in. Diesel. I'm in. Those punks need to learn respect. Mercy. That poor kid. Name the time and place. Snake. My bike's ready. Been waiting for a reason to ride. Crow. For a fallen brother's son, I'll drive through hell itself. Bishop. We ride at dawn. Just say the word. More messages flooded in. 40 responses in under an hour. Veterans, teachers, firefighters, parents, people who'd been bullied themselves, people who'd lost someone to war. All of them willing to drop everything for a 16-year-old boy they'd never met. Tank stared at the screen, something loosening in his chest. He wasn't alone in this, and soon, neither would Jamal. The next morning, Tank was on the road by 5 a.m. The highway stretched out before him, gray and endless, the early morning fog swirling around his wheels. Behind him rode Diesel, Mercy, Snake, Crow, and Bishop, the core members of the Pittsburgh chapter. The rest would meet them in Millbrook. They rode in formation, the rumble of their engines a kind of prayer, a declaration of intent. Tank led the way, Marcus Carter's dog tags hanging from his neck, cold against his skin. He'd carried those tags for 7 years, found them in a box of Marcus's personal effects that the army had sent to Denise. She'd given them to Tank at the funeral, pressing them into his palm with trembling hands. "He would have wanted you to have them," she'd said. "He always said you were the brother he never had." Tank had worn them every day since, a reminder of his failure, a weight he couldn't put down. But today, those tags had a new purpose. Today, they were going home. They stopped for gas in a small town just across the Ohio border. Tank was filling his tank when his phone buzzed, a message from Denise Carter. His heart stopped. "Who told you about the video?" Tank stared at the screen. His number was the same. Maybe she'd kept it all these years. Or maybe she'd found it somehow. Either way, she knew he was coming. He typed back, "I saw it in a group chat. I'm sorry, Denise. I'm so sorry for everything. I'm on my way." 3 dots appeared, indicating she was typing. They disappeared. Appeared again. Disappeared. Finally, "Don't come here to hurt those boys, Tank. That's not what Marcus would want." Tank's jaw tightened. "I'm not coming to hurt anyone. I'm coming to keep a promise." Another long pause, then, "He asks about you sometimes. Jamal. He remembers you from the funeral. Asks why the man who cried never came back." The words hit Tank like a physical blow. He leaned against his motorcycle, struggling to breathe. "I'll explain everything when I get there," he typed. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm done running." Denise's response came quickly. "I stopped expecting anything a long time ago. Just don't make things worse. Please. He's already broken." Tank put his phone away and looked at his brothers, waiting by their bikes. "Everything okay?" Diesel asked. "No," Tank said honestly. "But it will be." He mounted his Harley and kicked it to life. "Let's ride." Millbrook looked exactly like Tank had imagined. Small, quiet. The kind of town where the biggest excitement was Friday night football and the annual 4th of July parade. Main Street was lined with shops that had probably been there for 50 years. A hardware store, a pharmacy, a barber shop with a spinning pole. And at the end of the street, Rosie's Diner. Tank's grip tightened on his handlebars as they rolled past. This was where it happened. Where those boys had surrounded Jamal. Where they'd stolen his food, broken his skateboard, recorded his tears. The parking lot was empty now, but Tank could picture it. Could see Jamal on his knees, alone and terrified, while the world looked the other way. Not anymore. They continued through town, drawing stares from everyone they passed. A group of bikers wasn't unusual on Ohio highways, but in Millbrook? This was an event. Tank saw curtains twitch in windows, saw people pull out their phones to take pictures. Let them, he thought. Let them see us coming. The Carter house was on Oak Street, just like the internet had said. A modest ranch-style home with peeling paint and an overgrown garden. The kind of place that had once been loved but had been neglected by grief and exhaustion. Tank signaled for the others to stay back. This part he had to do alone. He walked up the cracked driveway, his boots heavy on the pavement, and knocked on the door. Footsteps. A pause. Then the door opened. Denise Carter looked older than he remembered, thinner. The lines around her eyes were deeper, carved by years of single parenthood and double shifts, and fighting a world that didn't make things easy for a black woman raising a deaf son alone. She stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You actually came," she finally said. "I told you I would." "You told me a lot of things, Tank. 7 years ago." The words stung, but he didn't flinch. He deserved them. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I disappeared. I'm sorry I stopped calling. I'm sorry I let you down. I'm sorry I let Marcus down." Denise's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She'd probably used up all her tears a long time ago. "He doesn't know you're coming," she said. "He hasn't left his room in 3 days. Won't eat, won't sleep. The school says he can come back whenever he's ready, but he won't go. He's terrified." "Of those boys?" "Of everyone." Her voice cracked. "The video went viral, Tank. 200,000 views. The comments. People are cruel. They're so cruel. And after I defended him online, I started getting threats. Death threats. Someone posted our address." Tank's hands curled into fists. "Who? Give me names." "No." Denise grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "That's not why I told you. I don't need you to hurt anyone. I need you to help my son." "How?" Denise's eyes met his, fierce and desperate. "Show him he's not alone. Show him his father's sacrifice meant something. Show him there are still good people in this world, because right now, he doesn't believe it. And I'm terrified I'm going to lose him, Tank. I'm terrified he's going to give up." Tank felt something crack in his chest. He thought about Marcus bleeding out in the sand, using his last breath to make Tank promise. To protect. To be there. "Where is he?" Tank asked. Denise hesitated. Then she stepped aside. "Down the hall. Last door on the left. But Tank." "Yeah?" "He might not want to see you. He might not remember you. He might—" "I'll take that chance." Tank walked into the house. The walls were lined with photographs. Marcus in his army uniform, Denise and Marcus on their wedding day, Jamal as a baby, a toddler, a young boy with a gap-toothed smile. And everywhere, evidence of a family that had been shattered and never fully put back together. The hallway seemed to stretch forever. Tank's heart pounded with each step. He'd faced enemy fire without this much fear. He'd stared down death and kept moving. But walking toward that bedroom door, knowing what he might find on the other side, that terrified him more than any battlefield ever had. He knocked softly on the door. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. Tank turned the handle slowly and pushed the door open. Jamal was sitting on the edge of his bed, his back to the door, staring at the wall. He didn't react to the intrusion, didn't turn around. His shoulders were slumped, his whole body radiating defeat. Tank stepped into the room, making sure Jamal could see him in his peripheral vision before coming closer. He didn't want to startle him. Jamal finally turned his head. His eyes, Marcus's eyes, widened. Tank saw recognition flicker across the boy's face. And something else. Something that made Tank's heart ache. Hope. Jamal's hands moved, signing something Tank didn't understand. But Tank had prepared for this. He'd stayed up all night, watching YouTube videos, practicing in the mirror until his fingers ached. His sign language was clumsy, probably wrong in a dozen ways, but he tried. "I'm sorry," he signed. "I promised your father. I failed. I'm sorry." Jamal stared at him. Then his hands moved again, faster this time, more fluid. Tank shook his head, frustrated. I can't." Jamal grabbed a notebook from his bedside table and wrote quickly, then turned it around so Tank could read. "You came." "I should have come a long time ago," Tank said, knowing Jamal was reading his lips. "I should never have left." Jamal wrote again. "Why now?" Tank reached into his vest and pulled out the dog tags. He held them up so Jamal could see. "Because I saw the video," Tank said, slowly, clearly. "And I saw your face. And I saw your father. And I remembered who I promised to be." Jamal's eyes fixed on the dog tags. His hand reached out, trembling, and touched the metal. "Dad's," he wrote. "I've carried them every day," Tank said. "Every single day for 7 years. They kept me alive when I wanted to give up. They reminded me that someone believed I was worth saving. Your father believed that. And I'm going to make sure you believe it too." Jamal's face crumpled. For a moment, Tank thought he was going to cry. But then something shifted. The boy's jaw set. His shoulders straightened. He wrote one more thing in the notebook and turned it around. "I'm tired of crying." Tank felt a surge of pride. This was Marcus's son, all right. Battered, but not broken. Hurt, but not destroyed. "Then let's give you something else to do," Tank said. "There are 40 people outside this house right now. They rode from 3 states to stand with you. Veterans, teachers, parents, people who've been where you are. People who know what it's like to feel alone." Jamal's eyes widened. He wrote quickly. "For me?" "For you," Tank confirmed. "And for your father. And because this world needs to see what real strength looks like. Not those boys who hurt you. Not the people who watched and did nothing. Us." Jamal stood slowly. He was taller than Tank expected, almost 6 feet, with his father's build. He walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. His hand flew to his mouth. Outside, lining the street, were 40 motorcycles. 40 riders. 40 strangers who had traveled hundreds of miles for a boy they'd never met. Jamal turned back to Tank, his eyes shining. "Why?" he wrote. "They don't even know me." Tank crossed the room and put his hand on Jamal's shoulder. "They know your father's story," he said. "They know what he sacrificed. And they know what those boys did to you. In our world, the world of people who've been to war, who've seen the worst of humanity, we don't leave our brothers behind. And you're one of us now, Jamal, whether you like it or not." Jamal stared at him for a long moment. Then he did something Tank didn't expect. He hugged him. A fierce, desperate embrace from a 16-year-old who hadn't felt safe in weeks. Tank felt the boy shaking against him, felt the years of grief and loneliness and fear pouring out. He held on tight. "I've got you," Tank murmured, not sure if Jamal could feel the vibrations of his words or not. "I've got you. And I'm not letting go again." When they finally pulled apart, Jamal's eyes were red but determined. He grabbed his notebook and wrote, "What happens now?" Tank smiled grimly. Now we show this town what real strength looks like. Now we send a message those bullies, and everyone who watched and did nothing, will never forget."
"Violence?" Jamal wrote.
No. Tank shook his head firmly. Something much more powerful. "We're going to stand with you, Jamal, in front of God and everyone. We're going to make sure this town sees that you're not alone, that hurting you means answering to all of us. And we're going to do it without throwing a single punch."
Jamal considered this. Then he wrote, "My dad would like that."
"Your dad would love that," Tank agreed. "He always said the bravest thing a man could do wasn't fight, it was stand up. Even when you're scared, even when you're outnumbered, even when the world is against you."
Jamal nodded slowly.
"When?" he wrote. Tank looked out the window at the gathering crowd. News vans were starting to arrive. People were pouring out of their houses. The whole town would be watching. "Tomorrow," he said. "Saturday. We ride through town. We stop at that diner where they hurt you. And we show everyone watching, everyone who shared that video, everyone who laughed, everyone who did nothing, exactly what happens when you mess with one of our own." Jamal's jaw set with determination. "I'll be ready," he wrote. Tank looked at this boy, this young man, who had every reason to give up, but chose to fight instead. And for the first time in 7 years, he felt something he'd almost forgotten. Pride.
"Your father would be proud of you," Tank said.
"I know I am."
Jamal's eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. He was done crying. Now it was time to stand. That night, Millbrook didn't sleep. The news of 40 bikers descending on their small town spread like wildfire. The police chief called an emergency meeting. The mayor issued a statement urging calm. Derek Sullivan's father hired a lawyer and started making phone calls. In homes across town, parents sat their children down and had difficult conversations. Some defended the boys, claiming it was just a prank gone too far. Others were horrified, finally seeing the video their kids had laughed at. At the Sullivan house, Derek sat in his room, staring at his phone. The video had been taken down, but screenshots and reposts were everywhere. His face was all over social media, tagged with words like bully and monster and scum. His mother knocked on his door. "Derek? The Andersons just called."
"They're pulling Jake from the team. The Mitchells, too. They're saying you organized the whole thing." Derek didn't respond. "Derek, talk to me. What happened? What were you thinking?" Still nothing. His mother pushed open the door. Derek was sitting on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands. "I didn't know," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know about his dad. I didn't know about any of it." "Would it have mattered?" his mother asked quietly. Derek looked up, and for the first time in years, his mother saw something in her son's eyes that she hadn't seen since he was a little boy. Fear. "I don't know," he admitted. "I don't know anymore." At Rosie's diner, George Harris was having his own crisis of conscience. He'd owned this diner for 32 years, served 3 generations of Millbrook families, coached Little League, sponsored the high school band, donated to every charity that came through. But 3 nights ago, he'd seen 4 boys surround a deaf kid in his parking lot, and he'd done nothing. He'd watched through the window, seen them mock the boy, seen them destroy his food, seen them break his skateboard. And he'd turned away, told himself it wasn't his business, went back to wiping down the counter. Now 40 bikers were coming to his diner, to the spot where he'd failed, where his silence had made him complicit in a child's humiliation. His wife found him sitting at the counter at 2 in the morning, staring at nothing. "George?
What are you doing? I could have stopped it, Mary. His voice was hollow. I could have walked outside and told those boys to leave that kid alone. I could have called the police. I could have done something. Anything. But I didn't. Mary sat down beside him and took his hand. Then tomorrow, you make it right. How? You'll figure it out. She squeezed his hand. You always do. And in a small house on Oak Street, a 16-year-old boy who couldn't hear sat awake in his room, holding his father's dog tags against his chest. For the first time in 3 days, Jamal Carter wasn't thinking about the video. He was thinking about tomorrow. About 40 strangers who'd traveled hundreds of miles for him. About a man who'd carried his father's memory for 7 years. About what it meant to stand up when the whole world wanted you to stay down. He thought about his father, who'd died protecting someone else. Who'd made Tank promise to look out for his family. Who'd believed, even in his final moments, that kindness and sacrifice and courage mattered. Jamal looked out his window at the motorcycles still parked on the street, at the bikers keeping watch through the night, at the American flags mounted on their handlebars, fluttering in the gentle breeze. His hands moved in the darkness, signing to no one and everyone. I'll make you proud, Dad. I promise. Dawn broke over Millbrook like a threat. Tank hadn't slept. He'd spent the night on the Carters' porch, watching the street, listening to the police cruisers that drove by every 30 minutes. They were scared. The whole town was scared. Good. His phone buzzed at 5:15. A message from Diesel. 20 more confirmed, coming from West Virginia, ETA noon. Tank typed back. How many total now? 53, and counting. Tank allowed himself a small smile. What had started as 40 was growing. Word had spread through veteran communities, biker clubs, church groups. People who'd never met Jamal Carter were driving through the night to stand with him. The front door opened behind him. Denise stepped onto the porch, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She handed one to Tank without a word and sat down beside him. They sat in silence for a long moment, watching the sky turn from gray to pink. He's awake, Denise finally said. Been up since 4. I heard him moving around in his room. Nervous? Terrified. She took a sip of her coffee. But he won't show it. He's too much like his father that way. Tank turned to look at her. How are you holding up? Denise laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been holding up for 7 years, Tank. That's all I know how to do anymore. You shouldn't have had to do it alone. No. Her voice hardened. I shouldn't have. Tank accepted the rebuke. He deserved it. After the funeral, Denise continued, I waited for you to call. Every day for 6 months. I told Jamal that his daddy's friend would come visit soon. That you'd teach him to ride a motorcycle like you promised Marcus. That you'd be there for his 10th birthday. Denise, his 10th birthday came and went. Then his 11th. Then I stopped telling him. Stopped waiting. She turned to face him, her eyes blazing. Do you know how hard it is to explain to a deaf child why people break their promises? How do you sign abandoned? How do you sign forgotten? Tank felt each word like a knife. I have no excuse. I was drowning, Denise. The nightmares, the guilt. I couldn't look at Jamal without seeing Marcus, without remembering that it should have been me in that grave. So you ran? Yes. And now you're back? Yes. Why? Denise's voice cracked. Why now? Because you saw a video? Because your guilt finally caught up with you? Or because you actually care about my son? Tank set down his coffee and turned to face her fully. All of it, he said,
Every single reason. I saw that video and something broke inside me. Not just guilt. Rage. Those boys looked at your son and saw someone weak, someone they could hurt, someone who didn't matter. His voice shook. But I looked at him and saw Marcus. I saw the bravest man I ever knew. I saw a hero's son being treated like garbage, and I realized that I'd been treating him the same way. Like he didn't matter enough for me to show up. Denise's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. I can't undo 7 years, Tank continued. I can't give you back all those nights you cried alone. I can't give Jamal back all those moments he needed someone, and I wasn't there. But I can be here now. Today, tomorrow, for as long as you'll let me. Denise stared at him for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. "Don't make me regret this," she whispered. "Don't you dare make me regret this." I won't. The front door opened again. Jamal stood in the doorway, dressed in jeans and a black t-shirt. He looked from his mother to Tank, reading something in their body language. His hands moved. "What's wrong?" Denise wiped her eyes quickly and signed back. "Nothing, baby, just talking." Jamal's eyes narrowed. He didn't believe her, but he let it go. He walked over to Tank and held out his notebook. "I've been thinking all night about what happens today, about those boys." Tank read the words and looked up. "What about them?" Jamal wrote quickly. "Derek Sullivan, he's the quarterback, most popular kid in school. His dad is on the town council. They think they're untouchable." "Nobody's untouchable," Tank said. "That's what I'm afraid of." Jamal's pen moved faster. "If something happens to him, if someone hurts him, they'll blame us. They'll say we started it. They'll make my mom's life hell." Tank felt a surge of respect. This kid wasn't thinking about revenge. He was thinking about protecting his mother. "Nothing's going to happen to Derek Sullivan," Tank said slowly, making sure Jamal could read his lips. "Not from us. We're not here to hurt anyone." "Then what are we here for?" Tank took the notebook and pen from Jamal's hands. He wrote carefully. "We're here to show you, and everyone watching, that strength isn't about fists. It's about standing up. It's about showing up. It's about making sure the people who hurt you know they can't break you." Jamal read the words. His jaw tightened. "What if they try to break me again?" Tank handed the pen back. "Then I'll have to go through 53 bikers first." For the first time since Tank had arrived, Jamal smiled. The morning passed in a blur of preparation. Bikers arrived in waves, 5 at a time, then 10, then 20. They came from Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Kentucky. They came on Harleys and Indians and custom choppers that gleamed in the morning sun. They came wearing leather vests covered in patches, military insignia, club logos, American flags. They parked their bikes along Oak Street, a growing wall of chrome and steel that stretched for 3 blocks. Neighbors came out to stare. Some looked terrified. Others looked curious. A few even approached, asking questions, offering water and coffee. Tank organized everything from the Carter's front yard. He assigned positions, reviewed the route, made sure everyone understood the rules. "No violence," he said for the 10th time. "No threats, no intimidation. We ride with dignity. We stand with dignity. Anyone who can't handle that rides home now." Nobody left. At 11:30, Mercy pulled Tank aside. "We've got a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Police kind." She nodded toward the end of the street. "Chief Morrison just pulled up. Looks like he wants to talk." Tank saw the police cruiser parked at the corner. A heavy-set man in uniform was getting out, adjusting his belt. "Stay here,"
Tank said. "I'll handle it." He walked toward the cruiser, his boots heavy on the pavement. Chief Morrison met him halfway, his face a mask of professional neutrality. "Mr. Reeves?" "Chief." "I'm going to need you to explain what exactly is happening here." Tank kept his voice calm. "We're planning a peaceful ride through town. Nothing more." "Peaceful?" The chief's eyebrow rose. "I've got 50-plus motorcycles lining a residential street. I've got half the town convinced you're here to start a war. And I've got the Sullivan family threatening lawsuits if anyone so much as looks at their son wrong." The Sullivan family should have thought about that before their son posted a video of himself tormenting a disabled child. Morrison's jaw tightened. "I'm not here to debate who's right and who's wrong. I'm here to make sure nobody gets hurt." "Then we want the same thing." "Do we?" The chief stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Because I've done my research, Mr. Reeves. Hell's Angels. You've got a reputation." "We've got a code," Tank corrected. "Honor, loyalty, brotherhood. We don't start fights, but we don't walk away from them either." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." The two men stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Morrison sighed. "What's your route?" "Main Street to Rosie's Diner. We stop there for 15 minutes, then we ride out." "That's it?" "That's it." Morrison studied Tank's face, looking for deception. He found none. "I'll have officers along the route," the chief said finally, "for everyone's protection. If anything, and I mean anything, goes sideways, I'm shutting this down and arresting everyone involved. Understood?" "Understood." Morrison turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I saw the video. What those boys did was wrong. But vigilante justice isn't the answer." "We're not vigilantes," Tank said. "We're family." The chief shook his head and walked back to his cruiser. Tank watched him drive away, then pulled out his phone. A text from an unknown number. "You think you can come into our town and threaten our kids? This isn't over." He deleted it without responding. There would be more messages like that, more threats, more people trying to intimidate them into leaving. They didn't understand. The Hells Angels didn't leave, not when one of their own needed them. At noon, Tank gathered the core group in the Carters' living room. Diesel was there, along with Mercy, Snake, Crow, and Bishop. Denise sat on the couch, Jamal beside her. The room felt crowded with leather and tension. "We ride in 1 hour," Tank said. 57 bikes confirmed. We go slow, 20 miles an hour max. We stay in formation. We don't engage with anyone, no matter what they say or do. "What if they throw something?" Snake asked. "We keep riding." "What if they block the road?" "We stop. We wait. We don't escalate." Crow leaned forward. "And when we get to the diner, what then?" Tank looked at Jamal. "That's up to him." All eyes turned to the 16-year-old. Jamal's hands moved, and Denise translated. "He says he wants to stand where it happened. He wants them to see him standing." "That's it?" Bishop asked. Jamal signed again. "He says standing is enough. Standing means he didn't break. Standing means they didn't win." Tank felt his chest tighten. Marcus's son, through and through. "Then that's what we do," Tank said. "We stand." The hour passed too quickly and too slowly at the same time. Tank found himself pacing the front yard, checking his phone, adjusting his vest. The nerves surprised him. He'd faced enemy fire without this much anxiety. But this was different. This wasn't about him. This was about keeping a promise. At 12:45, Denise approached him. Tank?
Yeah?
There's something you should know. She hesitated. About Jamal. About why this hit him so hard.
Tank stopped pacing. What do you mean?
Denise's voice dropped. This wasn't the first time. Those boys, Derek and his friends, they've been targeting Jamal for months, knocking books out of his hands, writing things on his locker, tripping him in the hallways.
Tank's blood ran cold. Why didn't you tell anyone?
I tried.
Bitterness crept into her voice. I went to the principal 3 times. You know what he said? Boys will be boys. Maybe Jamal is misinterpreting things. Are you sure he's not exaggerating?
Are you kidding me?
Derek's father is on the school board. His family has been in this town for 4 generations. We've been here for 7 years, and we're still outsiders. Denise's hands clenched into fists. Every time I complained, things got worse for Jamal, so he stopped telling me. He just absorbed it, day after day, until that night at the diner. Tank felt rage building in his chest. And the school did nothing. The school protected their own, just like they always do. Tank looked toward the house where Jamal was visible through the window talking with Mercy. He never said anything, Tank murmured. In his notebook, he never mentioned any of this.
He's ashamed.
Denise's voice broke.
He thinks it's his fault. That if he could hear, if he could talk, if he was different,
they would leave him alone.
That's not.
I know it's not true. You know it's not true. But he's 16, Tank. And the world has been telling him he's less than since the day he was born. Tank turned to face her fully. After today, he said, the world is going to tell him something different. At 12:55, Tank mounted his Harley. Behind him, 56 other engines roared to life. The sound was deafening, a thunderous declaration of intent that shook the windows of every house on Oak Street. Jamal emerged from the house, flanked by Denise on one side and Mercy on the other. He stopped at the edge of the yard, staring at the sea of motorcycles stretching down the street. Tank walked over to him and handed him a helmet. You're riding with me, he said, right up front, so everyone sees you. Jamal's eyes widened. He signed something to his mother.
He says he's never been on a motorcycle before, Denise translated.
Tank smiled. Your father used to ride with me in Afghanistan. Said it was the only time he felt free. Time for you to understand what he meant. Jamal hesitated. Then he took the helmet. His hands moved.
What if I fall?
You won't, Tank said. I've got you. Jamal strapped on the helmet and climbed onto the back of Tank's Harley. His arms wrapped around Tank's waist, gripping tight. Tank felt the boy trembling against his back. Ready? He asked, knowing Jamal couldn't hear him, but hoping he could feel the vibration. Jamal's grip tightened. Tank took that as a yes. He raised his fist in the air, the signal to move, and the Hells Angels began to roll. The ride through Millbrook was unlike anything the town had ever seen. 57 motorcycles moved down Main Street in perfect formation, engines rumbling in unison, American flags snapping in the wind. The sound alone was overwhelming, a wall of noise that made people stop in their tracks, that brought them rushing out of shops and houses to see what was happening. Tank rode at the front, Jamal pressed against his back. He kept the pace slow, deliberate, giving everyone plenty of time to see, to witness. People lined the sidewalks. Some held phones, recording. Others just stared, mouths open. A few cheered, actual cheers, fists pumping in the air. But not everyone was welcoming. Tank saw the protesters a block before they reached them. A dozen people holding signs. Bikers go home. Protect our children. Outsiders not welcome. Derek Sullivan's father was at the front,
his face red with rage, screaming something Tank couldn't hear over the engines. Tank kept riding. The protesters didn't move. For a heart-stopping moment, Tank thought they would have to stop, that the confrontation everyone feared was about to happen.
Then Chief Morrison appeared, stepping between the protesters and the road, waving the bikers through. "Keep moving," the chief shouted. "Keep moving!" Tank didn't look at the protesters, didn't acknowledge them, just rode past, steady and calm, like they didn't exist. But behind him, he felt Jamal turn to look, felt the boy stiffen against his back, felt him straighten up. Jamal wasn't hiding, wasn't shrinking. He was looking his tormentors' families in the eye. And he wasn't afraid. Rosie's diner appeared at the end of the street. Tank signaled, and the formation slowed. One by one, the motorcycles pulled into the parking lot, filling every available space and spilling out onto the street. 57 engines cut off simultaneously. The silence that followed was deafening. Tank dismounted and helped Jamal off the bike. The boy removed his helmet, his hair matted with sweat, his eyes wide. They stood in the exact spot where, 5 days ago, Derek Sullivan had stomped on Jamal's food, where he'd mocked his disability, where he'd recorded his tears for the world to laugh at. The bikers formed a semicircle behind them, a wall of leather and muscle and solidarity. News cameras focused, phones recorded, the whole town watched. And Jamal Carter stood. He didn't speak. He couldn't. He didn't sign. There was no one to translate. He just stood there, shoulders back, chin up, his father's dog tags hanging around his neck. Standing where he'd fallen. Standing where they'd tried to break him. Standing. Tank watched the boy and felt tears prick his eyes. This was what Marcus had died for. Not war, not violence, not revenge. This. A son who refused to be broken. A promise finally kept. A moment that would change everything. Then movement at the edge of the crowd caught Tank's eye. A figure pushing through the onlookers. A teenage boy in a Letterman jacket. Dear Sullivan. Derek Sullivan pushed through the crowd, his face pale, his hands shaking at his sides. Tank moved instinctively, stepping in front of Jamal, his body a shield. Behind him, the bikers tensed. Diesel's hand moved toward his belt. Snake took a step forward. Easy, Tank said quietly, not taking his eyes off the approaching teenager. Nobody moves. Derek stopped 10 feet away. He looked nothing like the cocky quarterback from the video. His eyes were red-rimmed. His Letterman jacket hung loose on his shoulders like he'd lost weight in the past 5 days. His mother was behind him, trying to pull him back, but he shook her off. I need to talk to him, Derek said, his voice cracking. Please, I need to talk to him. You've done enough talking, Tank growled. I know I have. Derek's voice broke completely. But please, just let me. I need to say something. I need him to hear. He stopped, realizing what he'd said. I need him to see. God, I can't even. Turn around and walk away, Tank said. Now. No. The word hung in the air. Derek stood his ground, tears streaming down his face, his whole body trembling. I'm not leaving until I talk to him. You can beat me up. You can do whatever you want. I don't care anymore. I just need him to know. A hand touched Tank's shoulder. Jamal. Tank turned. The boy's eyes were fixed on Derek, unreadable. His hands moved, signing something. Denise had pushed through the bikers. She translated, her voice tight. He says let him speak. Jamal. The boy signed again, more emphatically. He says his father taught him that courage means facing the things that scare you. He says Derek looks scared enough. Tank stared at Jamal for a long moment.
Then he stepped aside. Derek Sullivan stood alone in front of 57 bikers, facing the boy he'd tormented. His mother was crying behind him. His father was nowhere to be seen.
"I'm sorry," Derek said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry."
Jamal watched his lips, his expression unchanged. "I deleted the video," Derek continued, speaking slowly, making sure Jamal could read every word. "I told everyone who shared it to take it down. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know I can't undo what I did. But I need you to know, I need you to understand." He stopped, swallowed hard. "I didn't know about your dad. I didn't know he was a soldier. I didn't know he died. But that's not why I'm sorry." Derek's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I'm sorry because what I did was wrong. Period. It wouldn't matter if your dad was a soldier or a janitor or anything else. You're a person. You deserve to be treated like a person. And I treated you like garbage. For months. And I don't even know why." The crowd had gone completely silent. Even the news cameras seemed to hold their breath. "My dad says you people are making a big deal out of nothing," Derek continued, his voice gaining strength. "He says boys will be boys. He says I shouldn't apologize because it makes me look weak." He laughed bitterly. "But you know what's weak? Picking on someone who can't fight back. Recording someone's pain and posting it for likes. That's weak. That's the weakest thing I've ever done in my life." Jamal still hadn't moved, still hadn't reacted. Derek took a shaky breath. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me. But I wanted you to hear, to see, that I know what I did. I know it was wrong. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be better. I swear to God, I'm going to be better." Silence. Then Jamal's hands moved. Everyone watched as he signed, his movements slow and deliberate. Denise's voice was barely audible. He says you didn't need to know about his father. You didn't need to know anything about him. You just needed to be kind." Derek flinched like he'd been struck. "He says kindness costs nothing. Cruelty costs everything. And now you're paying." Derek nodded, tears still flowing. "I know. I'm paying." Jamal signed again. "He says he's not going to forgive you today. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not ever." Denise paused, her own voice breaking. "But he says thank you for coming. It took courage. His father would have respected that." Derek let out a sob. His knees buckled, and for a moment Tank thought he might collapse. But the boy caught himself, straightening up, wiping his face with his sleeve. "Thank you," Derek whispered. "Thank you for listening." He turned and walked back toward his mother, who pulled him into her arms. They disappeared into the crowd together. Tank turned to Jamal. "You okay?" Jamal's hands moved. "I don't know, but I'm still standing." Tank felt something crack open in his chest. Pride, grief, hope. All of it mixed together into something he couldn't name. "Yeah," he said quietly. "You are." The moment was broken by a commotion at the edge of the parking lot. Richard Sullivan, Derek's father, the town councilman, was pushing through the crowd, his face purple with rage. "This is harassment," he shouted, pointing at Tank.
This is intimidation. I want all of you arrested. Chief Morrison, do your job."
Morrison stepped forward, his expression weary. "Mr. Sullivan, they haven't broken any laws."
"They're terrorizing this town."
"They're standing in a parking lot." The chief's voice hardened. "Which is more than your son did when he was standing over that boy recording his tears." Sullivan's face went even redder.
"My son apologized. This witch hunt needs to end."
"It's not a witch hunt," a new voice said. Everyone turned. George Harris, the owner of Rosie's Diner, stepped out of his establishment. He was a big man, heavy-set with a white apron still tied around his waist. His hands were shaking.
"It's a reckoning," George continued, his voice trembling.
"And it's long overdue."
Sullivan scoffed. "Stay out of this, Harris. This doesn't concern you." "The hell it doesn't!" George's voice rose. "It happened in my parking lot. Those boys hurt that child 20 feet from my front door. And I watched."
He turned to face the crowd, the cameras, everyone. "I watched through my window, and I did nothing. I told myself it wasn't my business. I told myself someone else would step in." His voice cracked. "Nobody stepped in. And that boy suffered alone while I wiped down my counter and pretended I didn't see." The crowd murmured. This wasn't what anyone expected. George walked toward Jamal, stopping a few feet away. His eyes were wet. "I'm sorry," he said, making sure Jamal could see his lips. "I'm sorry I didn't help you. I'm sorry I was a coward. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it right." Jamal tilted his head, waiting.
"Starting today," George continued, 10% of this diner's profits will go to ASL programs in schools. I'm hiring a signing instructor to teach my staff. And you," he pointed at Jamal, "you eat free here for the rest of your life. You and your mother. Every meal. On me." Denise let out a small gasp. "I can't undo what I didn't do," George said. "But I can do better. We all can. This whole damn town can do better." Jamal stared at the man for a long moment. Then his hands moved. Denise translated, her voice thick with emotion. "He says, thank you. He says it takes courage to admit when you're wrong. He says his father would have liked you." George broke down. Right there, in front of everyone, the 63-year-old diner owner sobbed like a child. His wife rushed out and wrapped her arms around him. Tank watched it all unfold, feeling something shift in the air. This wasn't what he'd expected. He'd expected resistance, hostility, maybe violence. Instead, he was watching a town crack open. But not everyone was ready to break. Richard Sullivan hadn't moved. If anything, his expression had grown more furious. "This is ridiculous," he spat. "One mistake by a 17-year-old boy, and suddenly the whole town has to grovel? Apologize to people who don't even belong here?" Tank's head snapped toward him. "What did you just say?" Sullivan didn't back down. "You heard me. These people," he gestured at Denise and Jamal, "they've been here, what, 7 years? My family built this town. My grandfather was mayor. My father was police chief. We don't need outsiders coming in and telling us how to raise our children." "Your child," Tank said slowly, "filmed a disabled boy crying and posted it for 200,000 people to laugh at. It was a prank!" "It was assault." Tank stepped forward. "Emotional, psychological, maybe even physical. They broke his skateboard, shoved him around. In some states, that's criminal." Sullivan's face twisted.
You think you can come into my town and threaten me? Do you know who I am?
I know exactly who you are. Tank's voice dropped to a dangerous register. You're the man who raised a bully and then tried to cover it up. You're the man who called the principal to make sure Derek never faced consequences. You're the man who spent the last 5 days trying to spin this as a boys will be boys situation instead of teaching your son accountability.
How dare you?
I'm not finished. Tank took another step. You asked who these people are? Let me tell you. Denise Carter's husband, Jamal's father, was Sergeant Marcus Carter, United States Army. He did 2 tours in Afghanistan. He received the Bronze Star for valor. And he died. Tank's voice broke, but he pushed through. He died throwing himself on top of me when the mortars hit. He took shrapnel that should have killed me. He died so I could live. The crowd had gone completely silent. That's who these people are, Tank continued. The widow of a war hero, the son of a man who gave his life for this country. And you stand there and call them outsiders? You look at that boy and see someone who doesn't belong? Sullivan had gone pale. Your son isn't the villain of this story, Mr. Sullivan. He's a kid who made a terrible mistake. He just stood here and apologized, which is more than you've done. But you? Tank shook his head. You're the reason he thought it was okay in the first place. You're the reason he never learned that kindness matters. That everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. I don't have to listen to this, Sullivan muttered, but his voice had lost its force. No, you don't. Tank turned away from him. But your son did. And maybe that'll make all the difference. Sullivan stood there for a moment, humiliated in front of the entire town. Then he turned and walked away, shoulders hunched, defeated. Nobody tried to stop him. The next hour was a blur. News crews conducted interviews. Bikers posed for photos with townspeople. Children approached the motorcycles with wide eyes, and their parents let them sit on the seats and pretend to ride. Tank found himself shaking hands with people he'd never met. Teachers, shop owners, church members, all of them thanking him, all of them promising to do better. But he kept one eye on Jamal. The boy had been surrounded by people all afternoon, everyone wanting to meet him, to apologize, to promise support. Denise stayed close, translating when needed, but even she looked overwhelmed. Finally, Tank pushed through and touched Jamal's shoulder. You okay? He asked. Jamal's hands moved tiredly, exhausted. Too many faces, too many words. You want to get out of here? Please. Tank signaled to Mercy, who took over crowd control and led Jamal around the back of the diner. They found a quiet spot by the dumpsters, not glamorous, but private. Jamal leaned against the wall, his eyes closed. Tank didn't say anything, just stood there, giving the boy space. After a few minutes, Jamal opened his eyes and pulled out his notebook. I didn't think they would come. The bikers. I didn't think anyone would care. Tank took the notebook and wrote back, 57 people drove through the night for you. More wanted to come. We had to turn people away. Why? Because your father was one of us, and because what happened to you was wrong. And because sometimes the world needs to see that good people still exist. Jamal stared at the words for a long time. Then he wrote, I was going to give up before you came. I was going to quit. Tank felt his blood run cold. Quit what? Jamal hesitated. His pen hovered over the paper. Then he wrote, everything. Tank's heart stopped. He looked at this 16-year-old boy, this child, and saw something he recognized.
The same darkness that had lived in his own eyes after Afghanistan.
The same exhaustion. The same quiet despair. Jamal. Tank's voice was rough. Look at me. The boy raised his eyes. I know that feeling, Tank said slowly, making sure every word was visible. I know what it's like to want to disappear. To think the pain will never end. To believe the world would be better without you. Jamal's eyes widened. After your father died, I wanted to give up too. I drank myself to sleep every night for 2 years. I pushed away everyone who loved me. I thought about ending it more times than I can count. Tears welled in Jamal's eyes. But I'm still here, Tank continued. And you know why? Because your father didn't save my life so I could throw it away. He didn't take that shrapnel so I could give up. He believed I was worth saving. And I had to learn to believe it too. A tear slid down Jamal's cheek. You're worth saving, Jamal. Not because your father was a hero, not because 57 bikers rode across 3 states for you, but because you are you. Because you matter. Because the world needs people who can take pain and turn it into something beautiful. Jamal's hands moved. How do you know? Because I'm looking at you right now, Tank said. And I see someone who stood up when everyone wanted him to stay down. Someone who showed mercy to the person who hurt him most. Someone who chose courage when fear would have been easier. He reached out and gripped Jamal's shoulder. That's not weakness. That's strength. And that strength? It's going to change the world. Jamal broke. He fell forward into Tank's arms, sobbing silently, his whole body shaking with grief and relief and exhaustion. Tank held him tight, the way Marcus should have been there to hold him, the way a father holds a son. I've got you, Tank murmured. I've got you. And I'm never letting go again. They stayed like that for a long time, hidden behind the diner, while the world went on without them. When Jamal finally pulled back, his eyes were red but clear. Something had shifted in him. The darkness was still there, it always would be, but it wasn't alone anymore. He pulled out his notebook one more time. My dad told me about you once, in a letter. He said you were the bravest man he ever knew. He said if anything ever happened to him, I should find you. I tried to tell my mom, but she said you'd moved away, that you probably forgot about us. Tank's eyes burned. I never forgot. Not for a single day. I was just too broken to come back. I'm sorry. Jamal wrote, Don't be sorry. Just stay. Tank looked at the boy, Marcus's boy, and made another promise. His final one. Always. They walked back around the diner together, rejoining the crowd. Denise rushed over, her face tight with worry, but relaxed when she saw Jamal's expression. Everything okay? Jamal signed something. Denise's face softened. He says he's okay. For the first time in a long time, he's actually okay. Tank nodded at her, a silent understanding passing between them. The wounds weren't healed. They might never be fully healed, but they had started to close. As the afternoon wore on, the crowd began to thin. Bikers started their engines, preparing to ride home. The news crews packed up their equipment. The spectators drifted back to their houses. But the air in Millbrook felt different. Tank was helping Diesel secure his saddlebags when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check the news. The video is gone. Tank frowned and pulled up his browser. The original video, the one with 200,000 views, had been removed from every platform. But in its place, a new video was going viral. Footage from today. 57 motorcycles rolling through town. Derek Sullivan's tearful apology. George Harris's confession. Tank's confrontation with Richard Sullivan. And at the center of it all, Jamal Carter, standing where he'd fallen, refusing to break. The new video already had 500,000 views, and the comments were different this time. "This kid is a hero. Those bikers restored my faith in humanity. Millbrook, you better take care of this boy." Sergeant Marcus Carter raised a warrior. Tank felt something loosen in his chest. The world had seen Jamal at his worst. Now they were seeing him at his best. And they were watching. The video hit 1 million views by midnight. Tank sat on the Carter's porch, watching the numbers climb on his phone. Comments poured in faster than he could read them. News stations from New York to Los Angeles were requesting interviews. Someone had started a GoFundMe for Jamal's college fund. It had already raised $40,000. The world was watching. And for the first time in 7 years, Tank felt like he'd done something right. The front door opened. Denise stepped out, 2 beers in her hand. She handed one to Tank and sat down beside him. "He's finally asleep," she said. "First time in a week he didn't have nightmares." "Good." They sat in comfortable silence, drinking their beers, listening to the crickets. "I owe you an apology," Denise said finally. Tank turned to look at her. "For what?" "For being angry at you. For all those years." She took a long sip of her beer. "I blamed you for disappearing, blamed you for breaking your promise. But I never thought about what you were carrying." "It doesn't excuse." "No, it doesn't. But it explains." She turned to face him. "Marcus told me about you, in his letters. He said you were the strongest man in the unit, but also the most haunted. He said you carried guilt like other men carry weapons." Tank's throat tightened. "He worried about you," Denise continued. "Even in the middle of a war zone, he worried about what would happen to you if something happened to him. He made me promise to look out for you if he didn't come home." Tank nearly dropped his beer. "What?" "He asked me to make sure you didn't destroy yourself, to remind you that surviving wasn't a sin, that living your life wasn't a betrayal." Denise's voice cracked. "I failed too, Tank. I was so lost in my own grief that I forgot about his." Tank stared at her. "Why didn't you ever call me?" "I tried. Once. About 2 years after the funeral. But when I heard your voice on the answering machine, She shook her head. "I couldn't do it. I wasn't strong enough to carry your pain on top of mine." "And now?" Denise looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since he'd arrived. "Now I think we've both been carrying too much alone. And maybe it's time to put some of it down." Tank felt something break loose in his chest, something he'd been holding on to for 7 years. He reached out and took Denise's hand. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Not this time." "I know." She squeezed his hand. "Marcus was right about you. You are strong." "But you're also stubborn as hell." Despite everything, Tank laughed. "He said that?" "Among other things." They finished their beers in silence, watching the stars. 2 broken people, finally starting to heal. The next morning brought chaos. Tank woke up on the Carter's couch to the sound of his phone exploding with notifications. He grabbed it, squinting at the screen. 17 missed calls, 42 text messages, and a news alert that made his blood run cold. Breaking. Town Councilman Richard Sullivan resigns amid scandal. Tank sat up, scrolling through the article. Apparently, in the hours after yesterday's confrontation,
someone had leaked emails between Sullivan and the school principal. Emails that showed a pattern of covering up Derek's behavior. Emails that threatened teachers who tried to discipline him. Emails that mocked Denise Carter's complaints, calling her that woman, and worse. The town was in an uproar.
Tank was still processing when Denise rushed into the room.
"Have you seen the news?"
"Just reading it now."
"That's not all."
Her voice was shaking.
"Turn on the TV. Channel 7.
Tank grabbed the remote and flipped to the local news. A reporter was standing in front of Millbrook High School, microphone in hand. Behind her, a crowd had gathered, students, parents, teachers. Many of them were holding signs. The reporter was mid-sentence. The resignation came just hours after leaked emails revealed a systematic effort to shield the Sullivan family from accountability. But what's happening here this morning is perhaps even more remarkable. We're seeing something unprecedented. The camera panned to the crowd. Tank's breath caught. The signs they were holding didn't say what he expected. They weren't demands for punishment or calls for revenge. Instead, they said things like, "Kindness costs nothing. We stand with Jamal. Millbrook does better." And at the front of the crowd, holding the biggest sign of all, was Derek Sullivan. His sign read, "I was wrong. Teach me to do better." "What the hell?" Tank murmured. The reporter approached Derek, microphone extended. "Derek, can you tell us why you're here today?" Derek's face was pale but determined.
"Because an apology isn't enough. Words don't mean anything if you don't back them up with actions. I spent months making Jamal Carter's life miserable. I can't undo that. But I can spend the rest of my life trying to make sure nobody else goes through what he went through." "What do you mean specifically?" "I'm starting an anti-bullying program at this school. I'm going to learn sign language so I can actually talk to Jamal instead of at him. And I'm going to use whatever platform I have, as quarterback, as someone people listen to speak up when I see something wrong." His voice cracked. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to be different."
The reporter turned to the camera. Remarkable words from a young man who, just 1 week ago, was the face of viral cruelty. Whether Millbrook can truly transform remains to be seen, but what's happening here this morning suggests that change might actually be possible. Tank muted the TV. Denise was staring at the screen, tears streaming down her face.
"Did that just happen?" she whispered.
"Yeah, I think it did."
"Do you think he means it? Derek?"
Tank thought about the boy he'd seen yesterday, terrified, broken, desperate to make things right. He thought about the father who'd tried to sweep everything under the rug, and the son who'd stood up anyway. "I think he's trying," Tank said. "And sometimes that's all any of us can do." Jamal appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. He'd seen the TV through the window and was signing questions faster than Denise could translate. "Slow down, baby. One at a time." Jamal's hands moved deliberately. "Is that real? Is Derek really doing that?" "It looks like it," Denise said. "Why?" Tank stood up and walked over to Jamal. "Because you showed him something yesterday. You showed him that strength isn't about dominating people. It's about standing up." And he listened. Jamal stared at the TV, watching Derek talk to reporters. His hands moved. "I don't know if I can forgive him." "You don't have to," Tank said. "Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. It's something you give yourself when you're ready. And if you're never ready, that's okay too." Jamal thought about this. Then he signed, "I want to talk to him, face to face, without cameras." Denise's eyebrows shot up. "Are you sure?" "No, but I think I need to." Tank exchanged a glance with Denise. "I'll make some calls," Tank said.
The meeting happened that afternoon, in the back room of Rosie's diner. George Harris had offered the space immediately when Tank called. He'd also offered to close the restaurant to give them privacy, but Tank declined.
"Let people see," Tank said. "Let them see what healing looks like."
So the diner stayed open, filled with curious townspeople, pretending not to watch through the kitchen window, while two 16-year-old boys sat across from each other at a corner table. Denise sat nearby, ready to translate. Tank stood by the door, arms crossed, watching. For a long moment, neither boy moved. Then Derek pulled out a notebook and pen. He slid them across the table to Jamal. Jamal stared at the notebook, then at Derek. Derek spoke slowly, clearly. "I figured this would be easier. For both of us. I don't know sign language yet, but I'm learning." Jamal picked up the pen. "Why did you do it?" Derek read the words. His jaw tightened. "I don't know. That's the honest answer. I don't know why I thought it was funny to hurt you. I don't know why I felt powerful when you were scared. I just did it."
Like it was nothing. Like you were nothing.
His voice shook. "And that's the part that scares me most. I didn't even think about it. It was just easy." Jamal wrote, "It wasn't easy for me." I know that now. Do you know what it's like, being deaf in a hearing world?" Derek shook his head. Jamal's pen moved faster. "It's like being invisible. People talk around you like you're not there. They make decisions for you because they think you can't understand. Teachers give up on you because it's easier than trying. And people like you, people who should know better, treat you like a joke, like entertainment, like your pain exists for their amusement." Derek was crying by the time Jamal finished writing. He wiped his face with his sleeve, but didn't look away. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix 3 years of hell." "I know." Jamal stared at him for a long moment. Then he wrote something that made Derek's breath catch.
"But maybe you can help fix what comes next."
"How?" "You said you want to start an anti-bullying program. I want to help. I want to teach people what it's like to be different, what it's like to be me. Because if even one kid doesn't go through what I went through, then maybe this whole nightmare was worth something." Derek read the words 3 times, making sure he understood. "You want to work with me?" "I want to work with everyone, even you, especially you. Because when the guy who was the bully stands up and says, 'This is wrong,' people listen. People who wouldn't listen to me." Derek sat back, stunned. This wasn't what he'd expected. He'd expected anger, rejection, maybe even violence. He hadn't expected partnership. "I don't deserve this," he said quietly. Jamal wrote, "No, you don't. But this isn't about what you deserve. It's about what the kids coming after us deserve. A better world, kinder people, someone to stand up for them."
He paused, then added, "My father died protecting people he'd never met. He didn't ask if they deserved it. He just did what was right. I'm going to do the same."
Derek stared at the words. Then he looked up at Jamal, really looked at him, and saw something he'd never seen before. Not a victim, not a target, not a deaf kid. A person. Strong, determined, braver than Derek could ever hope to be. "I'll do whatever you need," Derek said. "I'll follow your lead. Just tell me what to do." Jamal smiled, the first real smile he'd given Derek since this whole nightmare began. He wrote, "First, you learn sign language, because I'm tired of writing everything down." Despite everything, Derek laughed. It was a wet, broken sound, but it was real. "Deal." They shook hands across the table. The diner erupted in applause. Tank watched from the doorway, his heart full. This was what Marcus had fought for. Not war, not violence, not revenge. This. Two kids, reaching across an impossible divide, choosing hope over hate. News of the meeting spread fast. By evening, the video of Jamal and Derek's handshake was everywhere. News anchors called it a masterclass in reconciliation. Social media praised Jamal's maturity, his grace, his refusal to let bitterness consume him. The GoFundMe hit $200,000. Scholarship offers started pouring in from universities across the country. A publishing company reached out about a book deal. 3 different documentary filmmakers requested interviews. Jamal's world had changed overnight. But Tank noticed the boy wasn't celebrating. He found Jamal sitting alone on the back porch that evening, staring at the sky. "Hey." Tank sat down beside him. "You okay?" Jamal pulled out his notebook. "Everyone keeps calling me brave, inspiring, a hero." Tank waited. "But I don't feel like a hero. I just feel tired, and scared, and confused." "That's because you're 16, Tank said. "You're not supposed to have all the answers. Nobody does." "What if I mess this up? What if I say the wrong thing in an interview? What if people find out I'm not as strong as they think I am?" Tank took the notebook and pen. "Then they'll find out you're human, just like everyone else. The world doesn't need you to be perfect, Jamal. It needs you to be real." Jamal read the words. His shoulders relaxed slightly. He wrote, "Tank? Yeah? Do you think my dad would be proud of me?" Tank felt tears prick his eyes. He took a long moment before responding. "I don't think. I know. Because I'm proud of you, and everything good in me came from him." Jamal's face crumpled. He leaned into Tank, and Tank wrapped his arm around the boy's shoulders. They sat like that as the stars came out, 2 broken people finding their way back to whole. The next week was a whirlwind. Tank extended his stay indefinitely. He rented a room at the local motel, but spent most of his time at the Carter house, helping Denise field interview requests, driving Jamal to meetings, running interference when things got overwhelming. The Hells Angels had gone home, but they called daily. Diesel was organizing a scholarship fund through their veterans network. Mercy was connecting Denise with support groups for military widows. The whole club had adopted the Carters as family. But not everything was smooth. Some people in Millbrook resented the attention. They blamed Jamal for the national spotlight, for the resignation of their councilman, for making their town look bad. Angry letters appeared in the local paper. Someone spray-painted the word troublemaker on the Carters' mailbox. Tank scrubbed it off before Jamal could see it. But he couldn't hide everything. One morning, Jamal came downstairs with his phone, his face pale. "What is it?" Denise asked. Jamal turned the phone around. Someone had created a fake account using his name and was posting horrible things, racist slurs, death threats against the Sullivan family, claims that Jamal had staged the whole thing for attention. "That's not me," Jamal signed desperately. "I didn't write any of that." "We know, baby, we know." Tank took the phone, his jaw tight. "I'll handle this." He spent the next 3 hours on the phone with social media companies, police, and lawyers. By afternoon, the fake account was down, and an investigation was underway. But the damage was done. Some people had seen the posts before they were removed. Screenshots were circulating. The narrative was shifting. Tank found Jamal in his room, staring at the wall. "Hey." Jamal didn't respond. Tank sat on the edge of the bed. I know this is hard. I know it feels like every time you take a step forward, someone pushes you back. Jamal grabbed his notebook. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to be left alone. I know. Now everyone has an opinion about me. People I've never met hate me. People I've never met love me. And none of them know who I really am. Tank took the pen. Then show them. Not through interviews or news stories, through your actions, through who you are when nobody's watching. That's the only truth that matters. Jamal read the words, then wrote, What if who I am isn't enough? Then you grow, you change, you become more. That's what life is. Nobody arrives fully formed. We're all works in progress. Jamal stared at Tank for a long moment. Then he wrote, You sound like my dad. Tank's heart clenched. He used to say that. We're all works in progress. He said it every time I made a mistake, every time I felt like giving up. Your father was a wise man. I wish he was here. Tank reached out and gripped Jamal's shoulder. He is, Tank said out loud, making sure Jamal could see his lips. Every time you stand up when it's hard, every time you choose kindness over anger, every time you refuse to break. That's him, living through you. That's his legacy. Jamal's eyes filled with tears. His hands moved. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for keeping your promise. Tank pulled the boy into a hug. I should have come back years ago. But I'm here now. And I'm staying. Jamal held on tight. Outside, the sun was setting on another day in Millbrook. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new obstacles, new reasons to quit. But tonight, in this small house on Oak Street, a family was healing. And that was enough. 3 months later, Millbrook High School held its first Deaf Awareness Assembly. The gymnasium was packed. Students filled the bleachers, teachers lined the walls, and news cameras crowded near the exits. What had started as a local tragedy had become a national conversation about bullying, disability, and redemption. And at the center of it all stood Jamal Carter. Tank watched from the back of the room as Jamal walked to the microphone. Denise stood beside him, ready to translate, but Jamal held up his hand. He didn't need her, not today. Jamal reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. His hands were trembling, but his eyes were steady. He began to sign. On the giant screen behind him, his words appeared in real time, translated by software that Derek Sullivan had helped install. The same Derek Sullivan, who now sat in the front row, watching with tears in his eyes. 3 months ago, I wanted to disappear. The gymnasium went silent. I sat in my room and wondered if anyone would notice if I was gone. I wondered if the world would be better without me. I wondered if my father had made a mistake, dying for people who would treat his son like garbage. Tank's throat tightened. He hadn't known Jamal was going to say this, hadn't known the boy was ready to share this much. But then something happened. 57 strangers rode across 3 states to stand with me. A man who loved my father came back to keep a promise. A town that had looked away started looking at itself. And the person who hurt me most stood up and said he wanted to change. Jamal paused, his hands steady now. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because I know I'm not alone. Right now, in this room, there are kids who feel invisible. Kids who are bullied and mocked and told they don't matter. Kids who are thinking about disappearing. He looked directly at the crowd. I see you, and I need you to hear me. His hands moved with fierce intensity. You matter. Not because of what you can do, or how you look, or whether you can hear,
or speak or walk. You matter because you exist, because you're human, because there is no one else on this planet exactly like you. Tears were streaming down faces throughout the gymnasium. The world will try to break you. People will be cruel. They'll record your pain and laugh at your tears, but you are stronger than their cruelty. You are more than their mockery. And if you just hold on, if you just keep standing, help will come. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will come. Jamal turned to look at Tank. Because there are people out there who ride through the night for strangers, who keep promises made to dying men, who believe that kindness is stronger than hate, and that one act of courage can change everything. Tank felt tears sliding down his own face. He didn't wipe them away. My father died protecting someone he barely knew. He didn't ask if that person deserved it. He just did what was right. That's who I want to be. That's who I'm asking you to be. Jamal's hands slowed. Be the person who stands up. Be the person who speaks out. Be the person who shows up when someone needs help. Because that's how we change the world. Not with fists or anger or revenge. With kindness, with courage, with love. He let his hands fall to his sides. Thank you. The silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Then the gymnasium exploded. Students leaped to their feet, cheering, clapping, stomping. Teachers were crying openly. Even the news cameras seemed to shake with emotion. Derek Sullivan was the first to reach Jamal. He wrapped his arms around the boy he'd once tormented, and Jamal hugged him back. 2 former enemies, standing together. Tank pushed through the crowd, Denise beside him. When they reached Jamal, the boy turned to them with shining eyes. His hands moved. Did I do okay? Denise laughed through her tears. Baby, you were perfect. Tank gripped Jamal's shoulder. Your father would be proud. I'm proud. Jamal smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. I felt him here, he signed, the whole time I was speaking. I felt him with me. Tank nodded, his own eyes wet. He was. He always is. The assembly ended, but the day was far from over. In the principal's office, a ceremony was taking place. The school board, minus Richard Sullivan, who had resigned in disgrace, was presenting Denise Carter with a formal apology. We failed your son, the board president said, his voice thick with shame. We ignored your complaints. We protected the wrong people. And we are deeply, profoundly sorry. Denise stood tall, her shoulders back, her eyes fierce. Sorry doesn't give me back 3 years of watching my son suffer, she said. Sorry doesn't erase the nights he cried himself to sleep. Sorry doesn't undo the damage your silence caused. The board members shifted uncomfortably. But, Denise continued, I'm not here for sorry. I'm here for change. Real change. Policies with teeth. Teachers trained to recognize bullying. Support systems for disabled students. And accountability. Actual accountability when things go wrong. We're committed to all of that, the board president said quickly. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be at every board meeting, every school event, every decision that affects students like my son. And if I see you slipping back into old habits, I will raise holy hell. Despite the tension, Tank smiled. This was Denise Carter at full strength. The woman Marcus had fallen in love with. The woman who had kept her family together through grief and poverty and isolation. The woman who refused to break. "We understand," the board president said, "and we welcome your involvement." Denise nodded curtly. "Then we have an understanding." She turned and walked out, Tank following close behind. In the hallway, she let out a long breath. "How'd I do?" "You scared the hell out of them," Tank said. "It was beautiful." Denise laughed, a real laugh, full of relief and triumph. "Marcus always said I was terrifying when I got going." He wasn't wrong. They found Jamal in the cafeteria, surrounded by students. Some were asking questions about sign language. Others were showing him things on their phones, messages of support from across the country. A few were simply sitting nearby, wanting to be close to him. Jamal looked up as Tank and Denise approached. "Everything okay?" he signed. "Everything's perfect," Denise said. "The school board just got the lecture of their lives." Jamal grinned. "I wish I could have seen it. Trust me, it was impressive." A girl approached Jamal hesitantly. She was small, with thick glasses and a shy demeanor. Tank noticed she was signing as she spoke. "Hi, I'm Emma. I'm deaf too. I wanted to say thank you for what you said. I've never heard anyone talk about wanting to disappear. I thought I was the only one." Jamal's expression softened. He signed back. "You're not alone. None of us are. That's what I learned." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Can we maybe talk sometime? I don't have anyone who understands." "You have me now," Jamal signed. "And my mom. And Tank. You have all of us." Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. Then she did something that surprised everyone. She hugged Jamal, quick and fierce, before running off to join her friends. Jamal watched her go, a strange expression on his face. "You okay?" Tank asked. Jamal's hands moved slowly. "I think I understand now. Why you came back. Why you brought all those people. It wasn't just for me." "What do you mean?" "It was for everyone like me. Everyone who feels invisible. Everyone who needs to know they're not alone." He paused. "That's what my dad did, isn't it? He didn't just save you. He saved everyone you would go on to help." Tank felt his breath catch. He'd never thought of it that way. All these years, he'd carried Marcus's sacrifice as a debt he could never repay. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe the point was to pass it on. "Yeah," Tank said quietly. "I think that's exactly what he did." That evening, the Carter house was full. Bikers had come from across the state for a celebration. The first meeting of the newly formed Marcus Carter Foundation, which would fund ASL programs in schools nationwide. George Harris had catered the event, turning Rosie's Diner into a mobile kitchen. Derek Sullivan had shown up with his mother, awkward but determined to be part of the healing. Tank stood in the corner, watching it all unfold. Denise found him there, a glass of wine in her hand. "You're being antisocial," she said. "I'm observing. There's a difference." "Is there?" Tank shrugged. "I'm not good at parties, never have been." "Marcus wasn't either." Denise smiled at the memory. "He used to hide in the kitchen at our own gatherings, said he preferred doing dishes to making small talk." "Smart man." "The smartest." Denise's smile faded slightly. "Tank, I need to tell you something." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. That's the thing." She turned to face him fully. "For 7 years I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop. Waiting for the next disaster, the next crisis, the next reason to fall apart."
And now? Now I feel like maybe it's okay to hope again. To believe that things might actually be okay. Her eyes glistened. And I have you to thank for that. You and your crazy biker friends. Tank shook his head. I didn't do anything. You and Jamal did the hard work. I just showed up. That's exactly the point. Denise grabbed his hand. You showed up. After everything. After years of silence. You showed up when it mattered most. And that? She took a shaky breath. That's everything. That's literally everything. Tank squeezed her hand. Marcus would have done the same for me. I know, but you're not Marcus. You're Tank. And you came back, on your own, because you chose to. She wiped her eyes. That means something. It means more than I can say. Tank didn't have words, so he just held her hand. Two people who had lost the same man, finally finding their way back to each other. Jamal appeared beside them, a plate of food in one hand. What's going on? He signed. You both look weird. Denise laughed. We're just being emotional. Adult stuff. Sounds boring. It is, Tank agreed. Very boring. Jamal grinned. Then his expression turned serious. Tank, can I ask you something? Anything. Are you going back to Pittsburgh? The question hung in the air. Tank had been avoiding it for weeks, not sure of the answer himself. I don't know, he admitted. I have a shop there, a life, but... But? Tank looked at Denise. She nodded slightly. But I'm thinking maybe it's time for a change, Tank said. Maybe I could open a shop here instead. Millbrook could use a good motorcycle mechanic. Jamal's eyes widened. Really? You'd stay? If you want me to. Jamal threw his arms around Tank, nearly knocking the plate of food out of his hand. Tank caught him, holding tight. Over Jamal's shoulder, he saw Denise smiling through her tears. He saw Derek Sullivan learning sign language from a group of students. He saw George Harris serving food with genuine joy on his face. He saw a community that had been broken, coming back together. And he saw Marcus Carter's legacy, alive and thriving in a small town that had learned the hardest lesson of all. That kindness is a choice, and that choice can change everything. 1 year later, Tank stood at the edge of Arlington National Cemetery, Marcus Carter's grave before him. He'd made this trip alone, telling Denise and Jamal he needed to do this by himself. They'd understood. The headstone was simple. Name, rank, dates. The bronze star insignia etched into the marble. Tank knelt on the grass, his knees aching, his heart full. Hey, brother, he said quietly. It's been a while. The wind rustled through the trees. Tank took it as a response. I kept my promise. Finally. Took me 7 years, but I got there. He laughed softly. You'd probably give me hell for taking so long. And you'd be right. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph. Jamal at his high school graduation, cap and gown, diploma in hand, the biggest smile on his face. Denise on one side, Tank on the other. He graduated top of his class, Tank said, placing the photo against the headstone. Full scholarship to Ohio State. He's going to study education, wants to teach deaf kids. Said you inspired him. His voice broke. He's incredible, Marcus. Strong and kind and brave. Just like you. Denise raised him right, and I try to help where I can. I moved to Millbrook, opened a shop. I'm there for them now. Every day. Tears streamed down his face. I should have been there sooner. I should have kept my promise from the start. But I was broken, man. I was so broken. And I thought staying away would hurt less than being there. He wiped his eyes. I was wrong about everything. Staying away didn't hurt less. It just spread the hurt to everyone else. But you knew that, didn't you? You always knew. Tank pressed his hand against the cold marble. I miss you. Every day. I see you in Jamal's eyes, in his smile, in the way he refuses to give up no matter what, and I try to be worthy of what you did for me. I try to be the man you believed I was. He stood slowly, his joints protesting. I'll be back. I promise. And this time, I'll keep that promise too. He turned and walked away, leaving the photograph behind. Behind him, a beam of sunlight broke through the clouds and fell directly on Marcus Carter's grave, illuminating the words etched in stone. Beloved husband, devoted father, American hero. And below that, added recently at Tank's request, a promise keeper. Back in Millbrook, life continued. Jamal's foundation had funded ASL programs in over 200 schools. Dear Sullivan had become its most vocal advocate, traveling the country to speak about bullying and redemption. Denise had written a book about her journey that had become a bestseller. And Tank had found something he'd lost in the desert 7 years ago. Purpose. He opened his motorcycle shop on Main Street, right next to Rosie's Diner. He taught veterans how to ride, giving them the same freedom Marcus had given him. He mentored troubled kids, the ones who reminded him of himself. Broken, angry, lost. He built a life. On the 1-year anniversary of the ride that changed everything, 57 motorcycles rolled through Millbrook again. This time, Jamal rode at the front. Not on the back of Tank's bike, but on his own. A custom Harley painted in his father's Army unit colors, given to him by the Hells Angels on his 18th birthday. They rode to Rosie's Diner, where a bronze plaque had been installed. On this spot, a community learned that kindness costs nothing, and courage changes everything. In honor of Jamal Carter and Sergeant Marcus Carter, who taught us all how to stand. Tank and Jamal stood before the plaque, side by side. Jamal's hands moved. Thank you for everything. Tank signed back, his movements still clumsy, but improving every day. Thank you for not giving up. Jamal smiled. I had help. Tank looked at the crowd gathered around them. Denise, crying happily. Derek, standing with his mother. George Harris, wiping his eyes. Mercy, Diesel, Snake, Crow, Bishop, all of them, still riding together after all this time. He looked at the boy who had become a man. The son of the friend who had died for him. The promise he had finally kept. Your father would be proud, Tank signed. Jamal nodded slowly. Then his hands moved one final time. So would yours. Tank felt something release in his chest. The last of the guilt. The last of the shame. The weight he'd carried for 7 years finally set down. He pulled Jamal into a hug, and the crowd cheered around them. 57 engines roared to life. 57 riders raised their fists in salute. And as they rode off into the fading sunlight, Tank knew that Marcus Carter was riding with them. Because promises kept never truly end. They just become the road that others follow. And that road, paved with courage, lined with kindness,
stretching toward a horizon of hope, would go on forever. Real strength doesn't roar. It stands. It stays. It shows up when the world looks away. And it always, always keeps its promises.